If you're hoping for a review trash talking on this movie, I'm afraid you've got the wrong review. Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. Wow, this time I'm coming at you to review a movie that's got me so excited. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you may know I normally do movie reviews during the day. I just saw this movie. Rented it on Prime for $7. I didn't know when I was going to actually be able to see this. Was super excited when I was able to see it now for $7. Saw it and I'm like, I'm on cloud nine. So I have to review it right now. If you're expecting, I don't know if you're expecting, like I say, trash talk. If you're expecting me to just laugh at this movie and say what a waste of time, or I fell asleep. Not going to happen on this review. Oh my god. Like, I haven't been this excited for a new movie, I don't know, possibly since like There Will Be Blood in, what is it, 2008? I don't even know where to start with this movie. All I'll say is it's like, remember 1999, was it 25 years ago? The Blair Witch Project came out, and that was a movie that was completely, it was the same kind of thing in a lot of ways, out in the woods and the horror, howling events and scary events and stuff, and it was completely like Blair Witch Project. You could argue was like avant-garde in a way where it was a completely different way to make a movie. Unfortunately, that way I never really liked, and that was like the first found footage movie I ever saw. A lot of people ever saw, and I was mostly disappointed and disgusted with that movie and the success of that movie. I think the only reason that movie really did as good as it did is because everyone thought it was real footage. So that's, I think, why that movie did as good as it was purported to have done. But it's not that often where a movie will, like, I don't know if you can say this movie completely reinvented a genre or anything. I mean, it's like its unique take on the genre is very, very, very exciting for me. I'm coming at you to review. I didn't even mention it, I don't think. I'm coming your way to review. Wow, absolutely amazing film by the name of In a Violent Nature. And honestly, I saw a video on YouTube of someone seeing it at the theater and talking about how people next to him were falling asleep, and maybe the guy he was with fell asleep and he just thought it wasn't that good at all. And I was like, he talked about, this is the first time I heard about it. He talked about, it's supposed to be a Jason thing and this and that, and I'm like, I instantly was kind of excited. Like, if people were bored by it, I'm like, God, I might really like it. And because I mean, I get bored by mainstream stuff, just the same stuff over and over and over and over, and that's my huge problem with 21st century movies. Same thing over and over and over. And when I watched the trailer, I think the next video I saw after watching that video was the trailer, and I'm like, holy shit, I bet you anything that I would love this movie. And I was excited and disappointed because I was like, at the time, like, when am I going to get to see this? If this is some kind of low budget indie thing, and when am I going to see this? Cut to whenever the hell it is. It's like, it's early July when I'm shooting this video, not sure when it's going to be published. Cut to now, and I was like, oh boy, I can see it right now on Prime for $7. And it was a situation where I was going into this because there was talk about, like, it's like, Terrifier kind of gore, like very gory and stuff, and I was a little worried because I'm not big on, I didn't like the Terrifier at all. It doesn't help that I hate clowns. That doesn't help. But I thought the gore in that was just like completely over the top and unnecessary and stuff. So that's the only thing I was worried about. Like, is the gore going to be so much where I'm going to like everything else about the movie, but be put off by the gore? I'm happy to say no. I actually laughed with glee at some of the kills in this movie. Oh my God, I'm actually so excited. Not that kind of excited, but so excited. And here's hoping that this comes out on freaking Blu-ray. Oh my God. But if it doesn't, I guess I'll have to buy it digitally or some shit. But I don't even know where to start. I mean, I'm just so, I don't know if there's been a movie that has like positively affected me so much since Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. And it's interesting how they're not exactly the same kind of movie. That one was, let's face it, like a little more quote unquote competent or whatever. And this one, I mean, I guess I can't even say that this one isn't. I guess the thing that maybe I like the least about this movie, but it might be how it's supposed to be, is all the characters kind of seemed like just. This movie reminded me of a video game, like a 3D, a video game where it's like, you're just walking the character around and you can hear the voices of the computer characters in the distance and things. And I don't know if it was intentional, but like one of my only problems with the movie is the fact that like the characters, the people in it that he kills and stuff interacts with, almost seem like just like generic video game victim characters, and maybe that was the intent because the thing feels like a video game anyway. But I'll briefly just talk about the premise, and one of the many things I love about this movie is the simplicity. And although I've just seen the beginning, middle, end thing so much, and like the reason for everything happening, and don't get me wrong, we know the reason for everything happening in this, but it's just so simple. What ends up happening? Well, first off, let me tell you the thing I love the most about this movie. And this just goes to show, I don't know who the hell this guy is. He wrote and directed this, made in Canada, Ontario, I want to say. Beautiful. First of all, you guys, if you've seen my videos, you know I'm a nature lover. If you haven't seen my videos, I'm a nature lover. Friday the 13th is one of my favorite movies from 1980. My favorite franchise is Friday the 13th. I was really intrigued about this movie, it being, kills in the outdoors, in the great outdoors. And shit, what the hell was I going to say? I think I was going to say something like, one of the things I love so much about this movie, and probably the thing I love the most about it, is just the way that it does something that's been done a bazillion times in a stylistically in a way that we, or at least I haven't seen before, visually. And ever since I was like a teenager, I didn't know a lot of people when I was a teenager and stuff, and there was a time where I was just desperate to like make a video. I wanted to make a video, but I didn't have anyone to make a video with. So what I did is, the premise of the video was me, I was clones. I was several clones, so I could be different people. And I set up the camera on tripods and places for the different angles. And when I played that back, or when I cut it all together and I play it back, I'm like, wow. Like a movie made with every shot being static, just stationary, non-moving shot, is actually really kind of a cool feel to it. And this was like in '95. And I was like, obviously being a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick, I was already aware of like static shot and the power of like a static, non-moving shot, And I was out, for the subsequent decades and stuff, I was like, what would it be like to like make a movie with nothing but static shots? Whenever something needs to be seen or revealed or whatever, we just cut to another angle. Granted, this movie isn't nothing but static shots, but kind of, almost. The thing that I love so much about this movie is the style in which it was made is absolutely amazing, in my opinion. And it's not doing stuff terribly, completely, amazingly different than normal, but it is at the same time. So I'll just simply say, is there a bug in my mouth? Might be a mosquito. A mosquito or a gnat might have ended up in my mouth. But very, very briefly, the premise: these assholes are in the woods at some kind of place that looks like some kind of dilapidated structure. There's this like a gold, some kind of charm or something on the end of a gold chain hanging from this pipe. You can just, I can't remember what the camera's fixated on, but anyway, it's this movie, if the movie's not following the killer or a victim, is basically a static shot, which I love. And basically what ends up happening is this person takes, it reminds me of another movie. What the hell is it? Oh, Funhouse, when the guy took the money. A group of people, this one guy wants to take this charm. People say don't take it. He ends up taking it, unbeknownst to them probably. And then immediately after that, this pipe kind of falls down, and this kind of Jason-esque individual shape, kind of comes out of the ground and just starts this slow walk. Whatever. And I knew that, obviously I saw the trailer and I saw that guy's review of the movie, and I knew what, this movie consisted of, just a lot of this following this guy walking through the woods. But I mean, oh my God, for a nature outdoors lover like myself, I mean, what a perfect, I mean, I could just watch 90 minutes of the walking behind this guy in these beautiful, green forest surroundings anyway. And I was so intrigued. I was like, how are they going to do 90 minutes of this movie? And I was worried that, I was hopeful. I wanted to like this movie. It turns out I loved this movie. But that's basically the premise. And then, basically we hear through dialogue later on that what ended up happening. I didn't get if you guys know me, I didn't get all the particulars and all the details about the backstory. The backstory regarding the killer is told around a campfire perfectly, perfectly enough, or, yeah. But perfect situation to tell the backstory around the campfire, scary campfire. But and admittedly, a lot of the dialogue, I was watching this at night and trying to be quiet and things, so I missed some of the dialogue or whatever. But we know that he's just basically by having that charm, which I think was given to him by his mother, that was hanging above where he was buried. That was the only thing to keep his soul at rest. So once that was removed, he's up to basically find the charm, and basically just kills all kinds of people in doing so. And that's the whole movie, 90 minutes. And I gotta tell you, the 90 minutes for me went like that. And honestly, I was kind of when you love a movie, you don't want it to stop. And honestly, I was like, I knew pretty much when it was going to be done, or that it was done, and I'm like, wow. And I was like, I can't go to bed and not make a review. I got to make a review right now. But I guess I don't. I mean, it's such a strange frickin' movie in the best way possible, where it's like I say, it's like a video game following a character, following behind a character, and it's almost like instead of the normal horror movie where it's like you follow the people going out to a location, and all of a sudden the killer pops up, kills, and disappears again. It's like the opposite, where it's like you follow the killer around mostly, and the victims are the individuals who are seen the least. And I can't believe it took, maybe this has been done before, but I haven't seen anything where this has been done before. I can't believe it took this long for someone to do it. I've pondered this idea myself, but for more of a comedic aspect. When I watch Friday the 13th, where bodies fall out of trees and stuff, I always think it'd be funny to see like the other side of that, where the killer is setting up, like Mrs. Voorhees, trying to rope a big huge heavy corpse into a tree or whatever, and how that works. But I never really thought of following the killer in a non-humorous way like this, and obviously a lot of winks and inspiration from Jason. I mean, it's really Jason heavy inspired, obviously, down to just like the walk and stuff. And I will say, I was the one thing I was worried about was just as I said, that the gore would be like too much for my old self these days. But I was delighted, first of all, when the movie, without spoiling too much, like some of the first kills, I think some of the first kills aren't really even seen necessarily, handled in a really creative way. One where it's like reaching towards a guy, and then we cut to later where the hand is bloody doing the same thing, reaching for what he's looking for or whatever. And I'm like, oh wow, so the first kill we don't even see. We do this kind of creative thing, so we kind of build up to where we start showing kills and things, and not all the kills are shown, which is kind of really cool. And again, kind of another wink to like the first Friday the 13th, whether it was doing that intentionally or not. It's a nod whether it was intended or not. But yeah, I just love the basic the style of how the movie was executed, conceived and executed, and basically following the killer more or less, and having, it's just such a simple switcheroo. Like I said, I can't believe it hasn't been done before. And what's also cool about it, it reminded me of like the original. I hate how you have to say original, whenever you talk about a horror movie these days, but the original I Spit on Your Grave, where it didn't have any conventional score. Same thing with this movie. It doesn't have a score. It doesn't have music when people are getting killed. It's going for this like more, I guess, realistic kind of just aspect of not being a movie or whatever, and doesn't have a score. People just get splattered and killed in silence, and it kind of gives it this creepy uneasiness. But I mean, I can totally see why, like, mainstream people, they're so used to seeing the same kind of thing over and over. Music goes here, whatever. Introduce the asshole characters, killer pops up, kills them, disappears, more asshole characters. They're used to seeing the same thing over and over and over, and I really got to commend the writer slash director of this movie for doing something so different and daring like this. I mean, very, 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 very daring and different, and wow, kudos, hats off to you, sir. Very well done. Yeah, I mean, some of the it's interesting, and the interesting thing about doing a movie where you're, instead of following all the victims, you're following the killer, is you don't get to know the victims, which makes it, you're seeing everything from the killer's point of view. So it's like, you don't, like, I don't want to come across like, I'm not a violent person myself. I don't want this to come across wrong, but it's like, it's almost, because you don't get to know the characters, it's really not a big deal when, like, no one's got a character, so it's not a really big deal when anyone dies or whatever, because, you just hear bits and pieces of their conversation. Like, the only time you ever get, like, the normal, conventional kind of movie scenes, I guess, is maybe around the campfire, where every now and then the camera, breaks away from the killer, and we have to kind of become a part of the campfire scene. The camera's just going around as the story, that involves the killer's history is being spoken, and all that kind of stuff. And what a perfect way to talk about the killer's history around the campfire setup. Scary ghost story or murder story around the campfire. Perfect environment for that. But I guess maybe one of my other complaints for this movie, maybe it was intentionally just making fun of current day social norms, quote unquote norms, if you will, is the characters are just, like, I guess maybe they're more killable this way, but they're so annoying in a kind of a 2024 way, if you know what I mean. And yeah, maybe that's all I'll say. But for those of us getting on in years, they're very too much 2024, and yeah, so maybe it's not so horrible to see him dispatched, is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not one for real life violence, just to be clear. Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm rarely like this pumped up for a movie, and I just want to make sure I don't forget to mention anything. But I think the main thing I want to get across, the main thing I love about this movie, is just the fact that it's just so wonderfully different, and I hugely appreciate how this movie is different. And there's a scene where, I don't know if I want to spoil it. I don't think I'll spoil it, because it's still relatively new and pretty more or less unseen. But I'll just simply say that I love the way the writer-director uses the camera in editing. It's just so amazing, and there's a scene, this movie, like, being a huge fan of, Go in the Woods or summer camp horror movies, Go in the Woods and Die, like, this movie hits so many of the beats that I kind of want a movie like this to hit. Frickin' campfire, there's a lake scene, swimming scene, cabin environments, all this kinds of stuff, and it hits these things that, as a fan of this genre, I want this stuff to hit, and it's like, oh, okay, swimming scene, campfire scene, scary story around the campfire. The only thing, of course, this isn't surprising in 2024. The only thing it doesn't really check the box for is, like, toplessness. But I mean, come on, let's be realistic. Is that going to happen? I can't remember if that's in Terrifier or not. I was so disgusted by that movie. I don't think it is. I don't think there's any toplessness in Terrifier, but that's about the only box that wasn't checked. I suppose another box that wasn't checked was cool, like, you know, scary kind of music, but I can let that one slide because it was an intentional choice to not have any music to, I guess, try to make a more kind of realistic kind of atmosphere or environment for this movie. But as I said, you know, thinking about replaying this movie in my head, like, I'm not exactly sure if it, like, the strange, like, inhuman, just video game character aspect of the characters was intentional, or it was just, you know, low budget, so bad acting or whatever. But that was the one thing that I guess was a little off-putting, is like, you know, I guess being a low-budget movie, that's gonna happen, but you never know if something's intentional or not, you know. It just, I couldn't help but think of back in the day. I don't play a lot of these newer fangled kind of games, but it just seemed like a video game so oftentimes, when you're following the killer and then you see the victims in the foreground talking, or, you know, and things. It just reminded me of a video game, and maybe that's where the guy got the inspiration for the movie. But yeah, very excited about this movie. Here's freaking hoping that it comes out on Blu-ray at some point. But like I say, I guess if worse comes to worse, I would just buy a digital version or something, possibly downloadable off iTunes. I don't know how it works these days, but yeah, I'm very this is the most, I think, a movie's, you know, positively moved me. It's weird to say that for like a slasher horror movie, but I mean, it's a big, you know, my favorite genre probably, and my favorite kind of genre within the genre is go out in the woods or a camping environment and die or whatever. So I mean, this, you know, like Friday the 13th 2009 is what, is that 15 years old this year? Yeah. There's a perfect example of, like, just absolute garbage, in my opinion, and something that's trying to do something in a new, you know, futuristic, or not futuristic, but, you know, a modern take on a classic movie. And it was just like, I was so disgusted with that movie in the theater. Just the first couple minutes, when it was like the Mrs. Voorhees stuff in the rain and shit, I was like, just before it was even like 5 minutes in, I was like, this movie's shit. You know, I was just like, oh my god. So it was so, like, 15 years later, there's a movie that's the same kind of thing, Jason-esque, and it just done in a way that moved me, like, profoundly. And it's kind of stupid to say for, like, this kind of horror movie with just this gore and stuff, and not really any character development. But like I say, I can't praise how much I love the style of this movie. And I'll just simply say, there's a log splitting scene, or there's a scene with a log splitting machine that may have been used for something other than log splitting. And I kind of had this idea of how it was going to go, and I was very kind of surprised when it didn't go that way. And the way it went was a little goofy. If you've seen the movie, it was just kind of like, wow. But that's interesting, because it was like, because, you know, they actually show the killer split the log first to, I guess, show the viewer what this thing can do. And then I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen with it. And that actually didn't happen. I figured, I don't want to spoil it, but I figured it was going to be the goriest outcome possible, and we'll just say it wasn't. And I was like, you know, and how long was that part of the movie? The outcome, the thing that ended up happening with the log splitter was strangely, like, I laugh at it, because it was kind of like, what's interesting is the killer's supposed to be, you know, like a simple-minded individual, very much. I mean, it's basically Jason, more or less. And like a slow individual, or whatever you want to call it, just, you know, not all there mentally. And you know, the way he used the wood splitting machine, it goes, you know, aligns perfectly with his character. And there's also a really, I don't want to ruin it, but there's like a moment where his face is hidden throughout the entire movie except for one point, and there's one point where his face is revealed, the front of his face. During this amazing, I bet if I showed Beth, she'd be like, "Ah." During almost this, it didn't bring tears to my eyes, but it was amazing how that moment was somehow, you really bonded with the killer in that moment. I'm not going to say any more about the moment, but if you've seen it, or if you plan on seeing it, or if you're going to see it, it's just like it has to do with a little bit of the backstory that you heard about, in regards to the character and stuff. But a moment where it's kind of like, remember the Escape from New York and Escape from L.A. when Snake Plissken just sits down in the chair for a minute. It's kind of like that, but it's a much more poignant because it has to do with the character, the disposition of the character, and the character's, it ties into the character's past, which is revealed at the campfire. But and that moment I found to be actually kind of sweet, believe it or not, with the killer, where it's just like, wow, this killer, is, yeah, I don't want to say it anymore. It was a sweet moment. And that might be like, it's possible something like this has happened before in horror movies where you kind of empathize with the killer. It's late now and I can't think too amazingly well, but yeah, that moment where it's just like, ah, poor killer, the victim, poor killer. So, yeah, one thing I want to say, I guess that's pretty much all I got to say. Otherwise, I'm just saying the same thing over and over. But in closing, I was delighted that the kills weren't overly gory. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not overly gory, but I guess it's so funny how, like, a movie like Terrifier, which is in a lot of ways very similar to this, except for the environment it takes place in, but it's funny how I don't generally go in for gore these days, but the gore that was done in this movie, I actually laughed out loud with some of it, and really chuckled and giggled with, it's like the gore in this movie I was absolutely I loved, and was just, it was just kind of like, as if a fun gory kill happens, and you're just excited about what's he gonna do next? What's the next thing how is he gonna off the next person? And it's just yeah, it's a rare thing these days for me to watch a movie and enjoy it so much, like all the way through. I enjoyed it from the very beginning. I was kind of like, yeah. The trailer, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, I bet you anything I'm going to love this movie. I actually liked this movie a lot more than I ever thought I could. I was hoping at best I'd like it, but oh my god, this is like the best movie I've seen. And granted, I don't see a lot of new movies, but this is the best movie I've seen probably since, 2008-ish, or, something. I mean, well, anytime Paul Thomas Anderson, after 2008 did something that was like a period piece, like, The Master or Phantom Thread, like I've liked those movies a lot, and yeah, but I guess for this, for like a horror, for me, like, I haven't liked a horror movie this much. God, I can't even remember the last time I liked a horror movie this much. I mean, and one thing I was kind of daydreaming about while I was watching the movie, you might have seen the trailers and the poster or something with the kind of the thing he wears over his head, the kind of mask thing. Like halfway through this movie, I was just wishing that at some point, it probably won't happen anytime soon if it ever happens at all, but I'd be very very up for a NECA action figure of this character. Like, how cool would that be? It's just like, proudly, stand him next to the old Jason collection figures and stuff, or whatever. But yeah, definitely my favorite horror movie in I don't even know how long. Like, this is probably my favorite horror movie of the 21st century. Like, no horror movie has ever, like, has ever moved me like this horror movie has in this century, in the 21st century. you know, and I can't, it all goes back to just the style of this movie and how much it's like exactly my kind of style. I guess that's pretty much all I'll say. If you haven't guessed by now, it's an easy 4 out of 4 stars for me. In a Violent Nature. It occurred to me that, you know, I do like the title, but another good title would have been like Desecrate, you know, or Desecrated, because that's the whole reason he gets up, is because his grave was desecrated. You know, that, I wonder if that title occurred to him. I mean, I do like In a Violent Nature, because it like, it means more than one thing, or can mean more than one thing, like, so I do like that. It's like, you know, the movie's violent in nature, but it also is violence that takes place in nature. So, I mean, I do understand that, but like Desecrated, you know, would be a good title, or just Desecrate, Desecrated, Desecrate. But yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough, and like I say, fingers crossed this is going to come out on Blu-ray. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, I guess I don't know how long this video's been going, but please feel free to let me know what you think of the movie in the comments. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, does my review make you interested to see it? Will you see it now? Just, you know, be warned that, like I say, it's so much not like what you're used to seeing, you know, with any kind, with this kind of genre, or any kind of genre, with movies in general. And that's the thing I like the most about it, is it's so different in a great way. Like Blair Witch was different in a way I thought was just pathetic. It was just like, oh God, you know, give me a break. But this is different in a way that's like, wow, you know, he's doing this, he's taking the same language of cinema, but he's like completely just doing this thing his own way, or, you know, and maybe heavily influenced by video games possibly. But even when it, you know, cuts away from like following the killer, you know, just the stylistic aspect of the camera, you know, just static, non-moving shots. I didn't pay attention to whether or not, like, if the camera, I think, does the camera move at all? Oh yeah, yeah, there's one shot that's like this really kind of cool high angle. But other than that, I didn't pay attention to whether or not, like, the camera moves at all when it's not following someone or anything or whatever. But I just love, like, so many of the things are just dealt with by, or images are like the camera's so far away. And even as a kid shooting, you know, as a teenager or early 20-something shooting Super 8 movies and videos and things, being a film buff and stuff, making my own short movies and things, like I had the same kind of language, where it was like camera all the way back to kind of emphasize how small what's going on is in the grand scheme of things, kind of thing. You know, just liking, and there's so many instances where the camera's just really far away from something, you know, and it's just like, and a lot of people, most people who are used to normal movies would just be like, God, what, you know, what, is he completely incompetent? Why would he be so far back you can't even see what's going on? Because it's a choice. It's a stylistic choice, and I can't say why he did it, but for me it kind of is just like, it does de-emphasize, like, oh, like if he happens to kick a dead victim down a cliff, and we cut so far away you can barely even see what's happening, except for, I watched it on a small TV, but you could see the splash. It's like, it just completely de-emphasizes the importance of the victim. It's like, okay, you know, you're so worthless or worth nothing that we're going to cut so far away to a shot that you can barely even see what's happening to the corpse, you know. So I just completely, you know, movies, you know, the way movies are made technically is like a language, and I just speak this guy's language, this writer-director's language, you know, completely and totally and utterly, and it's just like, I found this movie an absolute delight, and I guess I've probably been talking about it long enough, but I can't recommend this movie more, so please see it. I guess, like I say, know what you're going into, you know. I guess apparently most people a lot of people that saw this at the theater fell asleep, and I just, it's like, what kind of movies, it's like this is the opposite of a, you know, like I'd fall asleep to something that's just like every other movie, which most movies are now. Like, how can you fall asleep to something that's so unique? It's just so disappointing in humanity, you know. This movie is so freaking unique. It, oh, you know, how can you fall asleep? I mean, the thing just kept me on the, you know, just like edge of my, like, what's he gonna do? You know, what's he gonna do with this scene? It was just so fun. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.